So now let's summarize a little bit what happens beginning all the way back at the retina. We have a magnocellular, a coniocellular, and a parvocellular pathway. They emerge in the ganglion cells at the back of the retina, and those ganglion cells then form our optic nerve. And this diagram will give us a simplified representation of how those processing streams move through our primary visual pathway and into the where, how, and what pathways. So our magnocellular, our coniocellular, and our parvocellular ganglion cells form separate processing streams. They're not completely dissociated, but they're strongly dissociated. They then synapse onto different layers in the lateral geniculate nucleus, contributing to different kinds of processing. They ultimately converge, all three, in area V1 of our occipital or visual cortex, only to diverge again into two different processing streams. The magnocellular processing stream goes up into our parietal lobe to form the where, how processing stream, and the coniocellular and parvocellular processing streams, they go down to the temporal lobe to form the what processing stream. Now, there's also feedback from the parietal lobe to V1 and from the temporal lobe to V1. So information isn't just going in one direction. There's feedback as well. And they're not completely dissociated. There's some communication between these individual pathways at various points in this processing stream. Now, there's one more point I want to make about our dorsal and ventral pathways. So we've observed now that our primary visual pathway, the lateral geniculate nucleus, down to V1, has these different processing streams. After V1, it separates off into our dorsal where, how, our ventral what streams. And that division of processing for spatial motion sort of processing versus object recognition, feature recognition processing, that is a very strong feature of visual processing. But not just our visual processing. Our somatosensory processing and our auditory processing also exhibit these divergent streams of processing. So our somatosensory processing, it has projections up to where, how areas and projections down to what areas. Our auditory processing has where, how projections and what projections. So this is a common feature of many of our sensory processing systems. In addition to that, we have our parietal association cortex, our dorsal stream projecting onto the frontal association cortex, and our ventral stream, our temporal association cortex, projecting onto our frontal association cortex stream as well. So there are projections that go forward, and as we'll see when we look at our next two processing pathways, these projections are important as well.